Welcome to the Wild Type Podcast. I'm Lyssa Lizards.
I'm Neptune the Chameleon.
And we're your reptile girlies.
This one's for the wild type of girls.
All right. Well, today is our second episode,
Woo-hoo.
and we're just happy to be here.
We're basically professionals now.
Yeah, we're really getting the hang of this thing already.
2 episodes.
I know.
We know what we're doing. Not really, but
we'll get there.
We're figuring it out.
We'll get there step by step, day by day, you know? But for now, I want to go ahead and give you guys just a little reminder to follow us on all the socials. You can find us everywhere at the Wild Type Podcast. Mm-hmm. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Leave us a review. We would be grateful forever.
And there might be something in it for you because we're still doing our giveaways.
Tons of giveaways. So we're doing a lot of big giveaways for dubia enclosure, dragon strand ledges, but also if you leave us a review, you can still enter for a chance to get $25 dubia.com credit.
Yes.
So lots of great things.
And we are launching a couple episodes when we first launched this, but we're excited to announce every Tuesday we will be having new episodes for you guys. So
Tuesday is for the girls.
Yes, be on the lookout for that. So today we are talking about things people say when you get a pet reptile.
All the good and all the bad.
We have lots of things we hear all the time. I'm sure you guys do too. But first off, how do people even find out that you have pet reptiles?
Mine is super annoying actually, because it's all my friends who just out me to total new people who don't know anything about me, and they just are like all of a sudden, oh, my friend has an anaconda, and I'm like, oh, thanks.
You couldn't have led with what you do.
She's
for
super cool. She's got a great career.
These hobbies.
No, just reptiles. Snake lady.
It's like it's your whole personality, right? But I mean, to be fair, how often do you come across someone that has an anaconda? Especially when you're in like social settings, just like a Halloween party or like, a work event or
100%.
Whatever.
And that's the thing. And that's why my friends who I love so dearly, who out me, I get why they do it, because it's such an anomaly in our social circle. It's like nobody else has them except for us two. Yeah. So it's
okay. Because whenever I go and hang out with your friends, like your real life friends, I'm always like, are you the chameleon friend?
Yeah. Literally, you're always known as the chameleon friend. You're like, you're the one with all the chameleons. And I'm like, yes,
I will happily wear that title. I just went to your wedding recently, and it's like people from all walks of life. You know how weddings go, right? You got a high school,
melting
college,
pot
like
of human beings.
Your first job, all that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I was the only one to represent the
reptile community.
In the reptile world. So basically the entire night they're like, oh, like, how do you know the bride? Blah, blah. And I was like, reptiles.
That's my reptile friend.
And they're like, oh, are you the chameleon girl? I'm like, yes.
Like literally everybody just knows her as the chameleon girl, except no, my parents very much know your name, adore you. It's great.
Yeah. And I went on The Bachelorette. I feel like I got a little bit of street cred of more than just
way more street cred than just the crazy chameleon lady.
Yeah. Which like I said, I will happily wear that title
all day.
Any day of the week. But your friends are good like that. I will say recently at work we did this team bonding thing, and everyone was like this PowerPoint thing, and it's like, hey, everyone drop in your pets, right? And I showed up a couple minutes late to the meeting, my bad, whatever. But I was like, oh, what are we doing? They're like, oh, we're sharing what pets we have. And they were like,
no.
What do you, and they're like, oh, we already know you have a dog, which I have a Dalmatian, and when you work from home, your pets make appearances in your videos, and I get that. So oh, we already know you have a dog. I was like, yeah, and 4 lizards.
Just dropped literal mic drop in the meeting.
No one knew. Not a single person I work with up until that point.
Please tell me the reaction. What was the reaction?
They were like, a what? Say a lizard? I was like, yeah,
4.
And that's it, right? It's not just one.
No.
It's the fact that you have multiple.
Yeah.
Anyways, and I was like, yeah. And they're like, what kinds? And I was like, 3 chameleons and a gecko. And then they were like, what kind of chameleon? I was like, well, if you want to get into it, a Furcifer Paudalis and a,
literally
Kaluma Parsinite Christopher.
That's the other funny thing is half of the time when people the immediate next question after how many, that's the go-to question is you have how many?
Yep.
And then after you get into that, the next question is, oh, what do you have? And I'm like, well, how much time do you have?
How much time do you have? Do you want the scientific name?
Yeah,
or
literally.
Do you want their pet name?
Do you want their locale? Would you like to know exactly which island she hails from? Yes. Like, what are you looking for here?
Yes. And I feel like some people, because then sometimes people are like, oh, well, I had a blah, blah, blah when I was a kid. But sometimes some people will surprise you, right? And they're like, they'll have actual reptile experience as well. And you're like, oh, cool. I can give you like
you kind of have to like
names.
Gauge what their interest level is, because if they just have like a surface level interest of like,
which is most
99%,
it's just the novelty of it. They're like, what?
Right.
No way.
But you'll occasionally get somebody who's like, oh, I had X, 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 and X, and I know all these facts, and you're like, cool. Okay, we can actually get into this. We can hang. Like, we can hang in this convo.
Yeah. But so I don't know, that was work though, and I was like, whatever. I'm just gonna. It was the question,
You get to the point where you just don't really care what people's opinions are, and you're like, let's just talk about it.
Yep.
So
that's how I found out. But I know you have a good story time because we are blessed and cursed on social media, right? So like that's open to the public. The
amount of people who have found my account and DM'd me. I was literally at a different wedding on Friday night, and a girl that I grew up with actually, and it was like very distant, like family friend that I hadn't seen in years. And she's a lot younger than me. She came right up to me and was like, hey, I found your TikTok the other day. And I was like, oh my gosh.
And that's happened to me so many times. I kid you not. Yeah. I met this girl in the grocery store. She was wearing Gymshark like fit clothes, and I was wearing Gymshark fit clothes. We randomly striked up a conversation, exchanged numbers. This was when I had like recently moved and was like trying to make friends, and you're like very desperate, and you're like, please be my friend. We have one thing in common.
Our gym clothes.
Cute gym clothes. Let's be friends. Yeah. We had never talked after that conversation, but I still had her number in my contacts, right? And I don't delete my contacts. Well, TikTok will give you suggested follows based off of your contacts.
Come on,
or
TikTok.
will just like spit stuff out on your like FYP based off of like people you may know or whatever. She, I kid you not, texted me and was like, hey, is this you? Oh. And it like,
it's so much weirder too when it's coming from somebody that you've literally never hung out with.
Like, I couldn't even tell you her name. Not a clue. Not a single clue.
I've had a nightmare story too, where I had like a horrible, horrible first date, like terrible experience. Like,
we've been there.
Not a good situation. And I basically like within 48 hours after the first date, like blocked this man on everything. Right.
That's a no-go.
Didn't think I needed to block him on my reptile accounts. But then 3 years later,
they get creative.
3 years later, this dude blows up my stuff, and he's like, you shouldn't have been so like nervous to tell me about your reptiles. And I'm like, you think I'm nervous now? This was 3 years ago, sir.
No.
Like blocked.
No. Yeah. Anyway, so people find out one way or the other. But once they discover you have reptiles, then come the questions, which I usually welcome these questions, right? Because it's like a place of genuine curiosity. And like,
all I want to do is like educate and make these animals seem less scary. So and I'm all for it.
It's a novelty thing. I get that. Right. Like it's not often, especially in the circumstances where you typically meet people, you know, like if you go to a reptile expo, that's completely different than if you're
a niche event,
you know, at a Halloween party or whatever with your college friends.
Right.
So what are some of the things that you've heard?
Oh man, what haven't I heard at this point? I will say specifically with like my anaconda, the go-to thing is, what are you going to do when he gets so big? And I'm like,
or how big is he going to get?
That too.
Right.
Yeah, that's a huge one. And that's a little bit specific to an anaconda, obviously. But
I think because, so he's a male and the males get smaller than the females. People don't know that. And he's a yellow anaconda, which is smaller
than the green anacondas.
So people are picturing like green female anacondas.
They're picturing anacondas that they've seen at the zoo or that they've seen in the anaconda movie.
Right. And you're like, okay, he's a little smaller. Like he's still going to be a big snake.
That's literally, no doubt, that's the first thing I respond to that question is I'm like, okay, nobody freak out. Like I'm not going to have a 30-foot snake in my house. All right. And then I immediately go into that explanation of those two things. He's a yellow, he's a male. He's only going to get a max of like 8 to 10 feet at best.
Yeah.
So then you have to go in and explain. But what goes along with that is questions about the enclosures. It's shocking how many people will ask me if they're all in the same enclosure.
Why is that a thing? I don't.
What?
I get that all the time.
I'll get heated.
They ask, how many do you have? And you just say that you have more than one. And like, oh, do you keep them together? And what? And maybe it's because we're obviously in the reptile world and like you would never.
No.
But like, I'm not keeping multiple gerbils in the same. Well, maybe you can. Have it.
I actually don't know that. We can't speak.
We only know scaly things, not furry things.
Yeah, we can't speak about the small animals.
I'm like, actually, I think you can collab.
You might be able to do that.
But certainly not reptiles. No. And I'm always like, no, they're like independent and they're territorial and and they can't see each other.
Oftentimes too, like that question will come after I have like listed at least like, 4 or 5 of them. Yeah. And to me, it's obvious that like, a blue-tongued skink is from Australia and like all these other ones are from completely different places. So to me, it's very obvious. The requirements
are very different.
But they don't know that. And like,
well, I will say, even if someone has chameleons, which they do have similar requirements, they still ask me.
Still can't. Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not a thing. Mm-mm. Yeah. So they always ask that. And then like, how big are their enclosures? And then with chameleons, I'm always like 4 foot tall. And they're like, what? That's crazy. My
ultimate question that every single time will get asked is, do they bite?
Yeah.
Which is another eye roll question.
And the answer, can they bite?
What's your response? My go-to response for this every single time is anything with a mouth can bite. I can literally bite you. I'm not going to, but I could.
So I spent some time in the Keys, like working on a dolphin snorkel boat, like just fun fact. And people would ask me all the time because we're going snorkeling and I'm giving them like, here's how to snorkel, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, are there sharks in the water? I'm like, is it salty?
Obviously.
Is the water salty? and then they're like, yeah. I'm like, then there are sharks.
Yep.
Like, granted, we're going to the reef, so we're not going to be coming across like a great white anytime soon. But if you want to know if it will bite you or if there are sharks, like,
it can.
Yeah.
Might
obviously, there's things you can do to mitigate that and prevent that from happening.
And specifically with reptiles, that's always my answer is, well, literally, yes, they all can bite. Do they all bite?
What would your response be if someone asked you if your anacondas bit you before?
Literally right in my face, barely missing my eye.
Because he has, right? Yep. So how do you go about that without like freaking someone out?
That's a touchy one because I always have to kind of go into it and be like, I've been bitten by every single one of my snakes. I don't have a single snake that hasn't bitten me, and I don't really foresee ever having a snake that isn't going to bite you. But what I always tell people is that like 9 times out of 10, it's my fault.
Right. And I think that's the kicker, right? Yeah. Like it's out of a place of being defensive or startled or scared or whatever.
Or I did something wrong. Like, but held my camera over their head like an idiot.
But like to make them feel scared or threatened or whatever, to make them feel like they need to protect themselves.
Yeah. You have to make them feel safe in a way.
Yeah, it's never out of like an intention to like cause harm to you or to eat you.
That's that don't get me heated. I will get fired up over that.
I feel like that is another episode.
That is a trigger
for another day. Yeah. So we did also write down ahead of time some things of like what people say. So we already covered, do they all live in the same cage? Short answer, no. People always saying, I had a gecko when I was 8.
And that one kills me because I almost take that a little bit insulting because it kind of insinuates that they grew out of it, but I didn't, kind of a thing. Oh. Which is an interesting, I know like I should never take it that way.
No, I wouldn't have taken it that way.
But that's sometimes how I take it. It depends on how the person says it, right? Like,
yeah, of like maybe it's like a childish thing. Is that what you're?
Yeah.
Oh, I always thought of it as like them trying to feel included, right?
It probably is. I probably just assume the worst in people.
Of like, like, oh, you ever like, oh, I had one too, right? To feel like they're
and it totally
part
is
of it.
Probably that way, but that's just a thought because there is a mindset out there that
you're not wrong. And I mean, I'm sure there is someone who for sure meant it that way, but I would say probably majority of people just want to feel
most
included.
People just want to jump into the combo. So.
As a chameleon keeper, I get all the time like, oh, I had a chameleon that died.
Oh God, that is bleak.
And I'm like,
that is bleak.
And I'm like, I'm so sorry for your loss.
How do I continue this conversation? This is uncomfy now.
Yeah, they're like, I got one from Petco. It died in a week, and I'm like,
it's like, well, now how much information do you want?
I'm so sorry. Like, it's just, but that's just kind of the reputation that chameleons have. And again, they want to feel included. Like, oh, I had a chameleon and then bad news.
Yeah.
So I get that question often. Also with chameleons, because, people are pretty familiar with chameleons as like a reptile, is do they change colors? I get asked that all the time. And it's very similar to like your biting thing or, those types of things where it's like, do they change colors? Yes. But I know what they're picturing in their head is like purple
reality.
Polka dots.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay.
We can blame Tangled for that one.
But this is where we get to educate, right? And this is why I love these questions, because then that person can walk away knowing correct information, and then maybe they tell someone.
Hopefully they'll correct somebody
like,
in the future.
Yeah, exactly. So my answer is always like yes, but not in the way that the movies portray, and that they change more like a mood ring, right? Based off of temperature, temperament, mating behavior, and so they can get lighter and darker, but they're never going to change purple polka dots. Literally what I say, word for word, every single time, including the purple polka dots part, because I really that's just more fun. That just nails it home. Of like that's not like
it's not happening.
My Ambelobi Panther Chameleon is not just going to turn purple. No. It's just, and they're like, oh, did they do it to camouflage? And I'm like no, but but they're green. I'm like, yes, but
that's not how that goes.
Yeah,
man.
so. But people are always so grateful and thankful. Like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. Like, I always thought,
like, that's my favorite thing about it is when people ask questions, they're genuinely interested, and then they actually like walk away with a takeaway and are like excited about it. Yeah, that's the best part.
Absolutely. So I'm like, well, now when you go to trivia night, now you can actually know.
Got a fun chameleon fact.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one people always say.
I, as a snake girl, I get asked all the time about. My immediate next question is, what do you feed them?
That's on the list.
Yeah.
What do they eat, and do you feed live mice?
Yes. The live mice thing is something that everybody assumes. And it's just funny to me because that is one thing that is a well-known fact about snakes, is that they eat live prey. Like they can eat live prey. They eat rodents. That's a very common fact. So it drives me nuts when people ask me, well, what do you feed them? What do you think I feed them? Of course I feed them rodents, but I do always obviously have to explain. Yeah. My snake is strictly vegan.
He's a vegetarian. Yeah. No, I totally hear you. And and then it gets into the question of whether that's humane, and then people have their opinions on it. I always have to answer with bugs, right? Yeah, like people always ask me what my reptiles eat, and I say bugs, and they're like, what? Like what kind of bugs?
Yeah. And then you have to go into the topic of, oh yeah, I have hundreds of bugs in my house.
And this is a question of genuine curiosity, right? They really just want to learn. And I think that's fabulous. And so I always take the time, like they eat roaches and worms, and like, where do you get those things? I'm like, oh, you order them online, like, and it just spins into, like how much do they, and I love it. Yeah. Right. And I'm like,
that's when you can get into the nitty gritty.
How much time do you have? Because I will literally spend
It's like, do you want me to completely unleash on you with all the information that I have, or do you want the high level?
Yeah. And you do have to gauge a little bit of like they're like, are they just asking questions to be polite, or are they genuinely interested?
Because then we'll get into the awkward situation where we're spewing all of our information and brain dumping on them, and they're sitting there like, I no longer care.
Like, I did not ask for this. Yeah. I was just being nice. Yeah.
You got to just pay attention to those social cues.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so people always ask that. And then people will comment, I bet that room smells awful.
Oh, I hate this one.
Okay.
It's fair.
Yes or no, do reptile rooms have a smell? And the answer is yes. They do have a smell.
Smell like plants.
That's what I say. It's like an earthy dirt smell.
Yes.
And it's usually because you have substrate or live plants or things like that. Yes. But it's like, aren't reptiles technically considered like hypoallergenic?
Oh yeah, they don't have fur, they don't have pet dander, they don't have any of that. So like, no, like literally your dog is more likely to smell bad than reptiles.
The reptile themselves is not what smells. No, it's their enclosures.
It's their enclosure if they're improperly cared for and you're not keeping in control of their hygiene. Yeah. But like the reptile itself, zero smell. Absolutely nothing.
A memory just popped into my head. So I was with someone who was going to pick up a ball python, and this ball python was obviously some kid's pet. The kid had gone off to college. The parents were taking care of it, and they've like
tale as old as time.
Right. And they're like, hey, like we are just not interested in keeping this ball python anymore. So I tagged along with this friend to go pick them up. And this snake is like 10, 15 years old, right? Like has lived a long life, but it smelled like pee so bad. As soon as you walked into the room, it just reeked of pee.
And you can tell they haven't cleaned that enclosure in 10 years.
Yeah. No, because it was like aspen that was so packed down that it was just like, and it was just drenched in just like nasty. And I'm
shocked that aspen didn't mold, to be honest.
No, did not mold. It was just a brick. And it just like reeked of pee and just like broke my heart.
That's what I don't understand. It's like, when it comes to that question, it's like, does poop smell?
Yeah, but then you just get rid of it and
you just clean it out. Yeah,
like don't let it sit there and fester.
I get the perception because obviously most people will walk into a pet store and it smells like pets, but
That's all the furry pets.
It's all the furry pets. That's why I'm like, don't take out the smells on the reptiles. It's not the scaly ones.
It's not the scaly ones. Yeah. So, but I think I don't know if there are intentions behind it. Like, are they considering getting a reptile and they're asking for themselves of like, hey, do I have to worry about the smell?
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but
I think it's some people. It's very much just that's something they worry about, which I totally get because you wouldn't want a room full of animals that stinks in your house. Nobody wants that. That's not fun for anybody.
No, so. And I will say the maintenance with reptiles, as far as the smell part, is like pretty minimal, especially when you compare it to like dogs or smaller mammals or things like that. Especially if you do bioactive enclosures, then you're a
whole other benefit.
You're doing pretty good. So, do you wish there's anything like you would want people to react to? Like, I'm thinking, like, as long as you're open and receptive and you're not coming across in like kind of like a judgy, harsh, like
the minute that I pick up on any judgment or like you're a bizarre human vibes, as soon as I pick up on that, I'm like giving minimal information and dipping out of that conversation as fast as I can.
Yeah.
But most of the time it's overwhelmingly positive.
I'm trying to think of an instance where someone like gave me a hard time for keeping reptiles.
I don't have that many. It's genuine interest in like the anomaly of it, of like, I've never heard of anybody who has that many. That's crazy. Tell me more. Like it's just intriguing to most people. But I will say, like, I wish that a lot of the questions were a little bit less stigmatized when it comes to like specifically the snakes. I mean, that's what I deal with.
Sure.
It's like, you know, the question of like, do they bite? Like things like that. Some of those questions feel so obvious to me that it's like, I feel like it should be more common knowledge of, you know, it's like, yeah, any snake can bite, but that doesn't mean it hurts.
Right.
You
also,
know?
I'm curious too, like if someone would actually own an animal, if it did bite you all the time or did like try to size you up and kill it, like let's just flip it for a second and be like, assume all that was true. Then like, why would I even have them? Yeah. Be keeping them. Like,
and I think to me, that's part of why it feels so obvious is it's like, if this animal was literally going to try to eat me, why would I have them in my home? Why? Also, it's been 3 years. I mean, his plan's really taken a long time here, you know?
He's playing the long game, really plotting out his revenge.
He's really stretching out that timeline.
Yeah. No, I will say, like, I think things are overwhelmingly positive.
Oh, for sure.
And like, I will happily spend the time answering all the questions, no matter how silly or obvious or, you know, stereotypical they may be, because if that means that one person then gets to learn more, who then gets to teach someone else and someone else and someone else, I'm like, then
as long as you start that chain reaction, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I did just recently do a YouTube video, 5 things I've learned in 5 years of keeping chameleons. And one of the things I touched on was you'll be an educator.
Oh yeah.
Like whether you want to or not, as soon as people find out you have reptiles, this is exactly what happens is they ask questions. And I feel like it's our duty and our privilege to be able to spend the time with people and help teach them.
Oh, absolutely.
About them.
I mean, I don't know. I think that's one of the best parts about it. Like for me personally, like
it gives the women fuzzies.
Yeah, it makes you feel good. And it's nice too. Like through like my family, friends, whatever, I will often get people sending like their friends or family who have like kids that are like wanting a reptile.
Yes.
And I will always like coach the parents through like what to expect. What does this look like? What does the cost look like? How much can you actually expect the kid to be responsible for? And is this something as the parent that you want to bring in? It's so fun to be able to like introduce new people.
Yes.
And it's great that like you said, you just become an educator and like I become the go-to for anybody in my circle of friends, family, whatever. If anybody in their life ever mentions a reptile, they're like, you have to talk to my daughter.
Do your friends send you pictures of random geckos and anoles and stuff? They're like, look, I found this gecko.
The amount of photos that I have received of random brown anoles that are like native.
I'm so glad it's not just me.
And I'm like, and half the time they're like, do you want it? I'm like, no, let it go.
Yeah, I get that. And then people also send me like viral, you know, like reels and TikToks of a chameleon like grabbing bubbles. And it's always like really bad videos. And I'm just like, thanks for thinking of me, which I genuinely am thankful. I'm like, I think that's so cool that someone's on their vacation in Hawaii, sees this gecko or whatever is in their backyard and thinks of, I'm like, I am so on. I think that's fabulous. And if my friends are listening, please continue to send me pictures of brown anoles. I'm here for it, and reels and whatever else, you know, but it's cool because you are known as like the reptile girl, and like, I will happily wear that title.
Oh, all day. Forever and always the reptile girlies over here.
Man, that's what we're here for. That's what we're here for. So let us know in the comments or Q&A, any of that stuff of like any stories that you have or things that people said when they find out that you have
Tell us your
reptiles.
best and worst reaction. I want to know all of it.
Yeah, I want to hear the bad ones.
I know, because I feel like I'm lucky that like I haven't had that many bad ones.
Yeah.
So
no, I want to hear the bad ones. Dubia.com is a one-stop shop for all your reptile keeping needs. They of course sell dubia roaches, but also tons of other bugs like waxworms, hornworms, and black soldier fly larvae that can be shipped straight to your door.
And if you haven't seen their PVC reptile enclosures yet, you're in for a treat. They have both arboreal and terrestrial enclosures at great prices, along with tons of other supplies. When you shop at Dubia, you're also supporting reptile rescues because they give away thousands of bugs and enclosures every year.
Check out Dubia.com and use code THEWildType10 to get 10% off any order of bugs or supplies. The discount code does not apply to enclosures.
We want to thank Josh's Frogs for supporting the Wild Type podcast. Josh's Frogs is an online animal and reptile supply retailer who you may see at your local expo. We always love stopping by their booth.
They only sell captive bred animals, and their sales support animal conservation and research. They offer a large variety of feeder insects for your pet reptiles and amphibians that will arrive right to your doorstep. A 3-day life insurance policy is included, making it so easy to feed your reptile nutritious bugs.
So if you're looking for some crickets, use code THEWildType10 to save 10% on any sized crickets from joshsfrogs.com.
Big thanks to Pangea Reptile for the support of the podcast. They're one of the leading companies for reptile supplies, lizards, and their world-famous gecko food.
They just released their brand new micro feeding dishes made specifically for baby or micro geckos. These smaller dishes can be mounted to smooth surfaces and even branches and will help stop your gecko from getting food all over their enclosure. If you own a gecko, you know exactly how nice it'll be to not have to clean food paw prints everywhere.
Head on over to PangeaReptile.com to check out these new micro dishes along with their other amazing products like their face packs for shipping, chameleon kits, and gecko food. We have some very exciting news in the chameleon world. Our friend Bill Strand from Chameleon Academy is officially working with custom reptile habitats to launch a new line of arboreal cages.
With his 40 plus years of experience working with reptiles, we just know these new enclosures are going to be next level. The first cages in the Chameleon Academy line even have special features specifically for bioactive environments.
Both Bill and Custom Reptile Habitats are huge advocates for advancing reptile husbandry, so we are thrilled about these new enclosures. Visit ChameleonAcademy.com for more information.
I think we're good to move on into our next segment.
Whoop whoop, which is tips from the pros.
Woo!
So I've been keeping for 5 years. I know you have a few more years under your belt.
Ooh, yeah. I think I'm creeping up on year 15.
Okay. Yep. Anyways, so between the two of us.
There was a chunk there, though. Let me clarify. There was a chunk there in those 15 years that it was only one gecko. So
Charlie.
Yeah.
OG.
Yeah.
Yeah. So between the two of us, we've got a combined like 20 years in reptile keeping. That's, I feel like, a pretty significant chunk of change. So we have this segment, tips from the pros, things that we wish we would have known when we were first getting started with reptile keeping, or just things we've learned along the way that make our lives just way easier that we want to share with you guys.
Please learn from us. Don't make the same screw-ups that we did,
because
there have been a lot.
Yeah. So these are just tips and tricks, and we'll share these, every couple weeks as we do these segments. So for this one, we're talking about buying bugs online.
The best way to do it.
Yes. So we can go into the pros and cons of buying bugs online, but maybe we should first start of where we bought our bugs when we were first getting into reptile keeping.
I was a big box chain pet store girly for literally, I want to say 8 years. It was ridiculous.
There was a point where you lived like 2 minutes.
Oh yeah. I had a PetSmart right around the corner, and I was like, that's my go-to. I go twice a week. I pick up my bugs. I would say for the first 6 to 8 years of my leopard gecko's life, I did not even keep bugs in my house at all.
Yeah. So were you even gut loading at that point?
Probably not.
Yeah.
I mean, poor Charlie. He's a trooper. Half of his life has been great. The first half, not so much.
Room for improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you were buying from chain stores, PetSmart and stuff.
And I was pretty much only doing super worms and crickets too. That was it.
Yeah. I went a little more adventurous, and then I went to the Facebook groups, and I found this lady who has this Facebook group who sells bugs out of her home, and it's totally like a drug deal. And what happens is you text her phone number and you say how many bugs you want, and she like, and what time you'll be there. I kid you not, cash only. You pull up into her driveway and she just comes out and gives you 500 roaches, and then you just hand over the cash and you just go on your merry way. What do you think her neighbors think?
I will never forget the first time you told me that you were doing that. And this was back when I was still shopping at the big chain pet stores for my bugs. And I was like, I'm so sorry. You're doing a bug deal? Like what?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Bug deal rhymes with drug deal. Bug dealer. No,
she was a literal bug dealer.
Bug dealer. Yeah. No. So like, I'm assuming this lady like works from home or is at her home all day to be able to do these bugs. So imagine being her neighbor.
And you just see people walking away with these deli cups at all times. Like they probably did think that she was a drug dealer.
So in her garage door has like the little windows, and they were covered with like tinfoil. I'm assuming she keeps her bugs like in her garage because she's got colonies upon colonies. And so it's probably like heat regulated and like whatever else. But so now she's got tinfoil on her
that's even sketchier.
Garage door. And then she comes out, takes it. How many times a day is she doing this? And then what are your neighbors like? Nothing good is coming from that.
And this is why we buy online now.
The lady was just the sweetest though. And her pricing was fabulous.
I remember.
The bugs were healthy.
Because that was the thing. That was the kicker for me. When you told me that you were doing this, I was like, okay, well, how much is it? And you told me the price. And I was like, I'm paying like triple that.
Yeah.
Like at
her prices were fabulous.
Yeah.
She always threw in extras. Like they were always very healthy bugs that lived a long time. Like literally no complaints, just very odd circumstances and ways to buy bugs. But I also went to like Facebook, marketplace or whatever, and people would have colonies, and like their colonies get too big, or they just want to like sell off some of the roaches.
I've literally ordered bugs off of Amazon these days occasionally. I mean, so
I just go to people's homes, and then they're like, hey, here's an extra like 200 medium dubias, $20. And I'm like, sold, right? Because people are just trying to get rid of their roaches. But yeah, and then there's also like local reptile shops. We're fortunate enough that we live in an area where we do have quite a few reptile shops that do carry bugs.
And you can also always stock up at expos too, which is like, definitely great.
Yeah, we've definitely done that. Yeah.
For us at least, like the expos are 6 months in between. And like, I don't care how good you keep your crickets and your worms, they're not going to last that full 6 months till the next one. So
absolutely. So that's where we started. But then I think now we're I'm consistently buying my bugs online unless I see some like novelty bug at an expo or just like a really good deal or something. Then I'll like snatch those up. But I'm usually pretty good about gauging how long my bugs are going to last and like ordering online. And
I've got a 6 week weekly order.
So people ask me all the time, like, how do your bugs last so long, right? Because I'm buying like hundreds at a time, and like, how are these lasting? And I think this is the kicker: is like when you buy your bugs online, the
so
quality
much better.
It sounds weird, I know, because we're just talking bugs, but the quality of the bug between like your chain stores versus these like novelty,
the lifespan is double. I mean, it's crazy,
triple even.
Yeah, true. It depends for dubious for sure.
Depends on the bugs.
Yeah.
But like these are vendors who are specializing just in breeding bugs exclusively for being fed to your reptile.
They typically care more about the nutrition. They care more about just their entire environment and how they're being raised and like all of that.
Quality. Now, the analogy I use when I'm explaining this to new keepers is like, would you purchase your reptile from Petco, PetSmart chain stores? You could, but you're also increasing the risk of like health issues or whatever because of the breeding that's going on and not attention to detail with genetics. Same thing with the bugs. They're just cranking out crickets after crickets.
Thousands and thousands at a time.
And those are being gut loaded with like potatoes. Right. And like that's
or the dreaded orange cubes.
Yeah. And so like their life expectancy and quality of the bug is not going to be anywhere near.
It's next level. It's next level difference. I mean, I remember the first time I ever ordered them online, I was like shocked by how long they lived.
Yeah.
Because I had never had any bugs from a big box pet store.
Say that 10 times fast.
But I've never had any that lasted nearly as long as the ones that I've ordered online. I mean, it's so just a drastic difference.
The quality and like the shelf life is improved, but the pricing is much better.
10 times better.
Dude, I saw, what was it, like PetSmart or something like that? It was like $3 for one hornworm.
Oh, no, it's insane. And it comes in like a one little, I'm like, what is that? Like your monthly treat? Like what?
That's crazy. Wild. Or you can get 24 for $10.
You literally
online, right?
It's like, insane. It's a huge difference in price. It has saved me so much money. It's wild.
And I think you can buy larger quantities of bugs because they do last longer, especially with like dubia roaches, superworms, things like that do have a longer.
And then you don't get the look from the pet store employee when you ask for 100+ crickets or 100+ of, whatever type of bug. Right, because
I'm sure they're used to the person who has like the one leopard gecko who gets the like 10 crickets.
The people at PetSmart, like literally, I would typically do back in the day when I would do this, I would typically ask for either 75 all the way up to 150, just kind of depended on how many I had left and whatever. And when I would do that, it depended on who the employee was. If it was one of the reptile specialists, they would usually kind of like raise their eyebrows but not say anything. Yeah. But occasionally I would get the little girl who like is one of the dog or cat like supply people who just happened to be in the reptile section at that point.
Oh no.
And I would say 75 to 100 and she would look at me like, you want what? How many?
That's
How
so
many?
Funny.
And it was just like ridiculous. So you can bypass that whole situation too.
Yes. Instead, you just get weird looks from your mailman. So.
Yes. You can also, I also one time in one of those chain pet stores was in line with my bag of crickets and I was being eyed so hard by this Karen who was just sitting over here looking at me with this horrified look on her face. And I was like, I finally turned, like she was just making this awkward eye contact with me so many times that I finally asked her, I was like, can I help you? And she looked at me and she was like, what are you going to do with those? And I was like, you're in a pet store. What do you think I'm gonna eat
to my pet?
I'm eating them actually. I'm eating them. Is that what you're worried about? Is that why you're so scared?
Chocolate covered crickets. Yeah.
No. And so, but she clearly thought that like it was something along those lines. And as soon as I said, oh, I feed them to my lizards, she was like, oh, and looked so relieved. So
did she think she was feeding, like you were feeding them to your dog or something?
I have no idea. Couldn't tell you. Ridiculous.
Intriguing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just lots of awkward scenarios you can just avoid.
Yeah. The other thing with buying online is the variety, right? Because like I do my chameleon consulting and stuff like that. So I always ask people like, what bugs do you feed? And I get all the time like mealworms, crickets and mealworms. And I'm like, okay, have you considered adding in other bugs? I'm like, oh, my store doesn't carry them, which I totally get. Because if you are shopping at like Petco, PetSmart, you're limited to the variety. 100%. And I will say there has been drastic improvement because like
huge improvement.
They didn't even carry hornworms when I was getting into
it was strictly crickets and mealworms for the longest time.
But I'm like, have you tried adding in silkworms, black soldier fly larvae, all these things? And they're like, huh?
They're like, how do I even get those?
They just they don't have them local. And I'm like, okay, have you considered buying your bugs online? And that is a game changer. Like being able to provide the variety of bugs at the convenience of being able to buy them at the lower pricing, higher quality. Like
you don't even have to leave your house.
Win-win-win. It's a win-win-win.
It's for the best. I mean, genuinely, I can't even imagine going and getting them at a pet store anymore.
Yeah. So I feel like there's a lot of benefits to buying your bugs online. So if that's something you guys are already doing, awesome. If it's something that you are thinking about or, wondering if you should do, then
now
maybe
you have a
now's
list of reasons why.
Just try. And a lot of places sell variety packs too, where it's like a little bit of a couple different bugs. So like if you have a new reptile and you don't know what they like, then that's a good way to get started. And so take advantage.
Yep. Tips from the pros, man.
Tips from the pros. Yeah. So I think that wraps up this episode. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think just, give us a follow on all of our socials and we're going to have new episodes every single Tuesday. So
don't forget about the giveaways.
Tons of giveaways.
Be sure to subscribe, follow us on, we don't even really know how Spotify works yet, but like,
we're still figuring that out.
But if you can,
by the time this comes out, we'll know.
Yeah. We're still figuring it out right now. But next episode, we're going to be talking about whether or not you should gift a pet reptile.
Juicy topic.
Especially as we're coming up on the holiday season. So we'll be talking about that in the next episode. So be on the lookout for that. You still have time for our giveaways. So take advantage. Otherwise, I'm Neptune the Chameleon.
And I'm Lyssa's Lizards.
And we'll talk to you later, reptile girlies.
Bye.
Bye.